The massive space station called Nexus hung in the darkness like a giant metal flower. Its silver arms stretched out in all directions, each one bigger than most cities on Earth. Ships from 12 different alien worlds docked at its ports, bringing visitors who had traveled across the galaxy for this special day. Today, humanity would join the Galactic Council. Ambassador Park Nari stood in the main hall, her black diplomatic uniform crisp and clean. She watched as strange beings moved around her. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. Others had scales and sharp teeth. A few seemed to be made of pure energy, glowing softly as they floated past. Behind her stood Gunnery, Sergeant Kang Wu. His marine dress uniform was perfect, every button shining. His face showed nothing, but his eyes watched everything. He had been chosen to protect the human delegation, though most people here seemed friendly enough. "Ambassador Park," said a voice like wind chimes. She turned to see Veltar, the council chairman. He looked like a tall crystal sculpture that somehow moved and talked. "Welcome to Nexus Station. We are excited to meet your people." Park Nari smiled and bowed slightly. "Thank you, Chairman Veltar. We are honored to be here." Near them, a large reptile creature laughed loudly. This was Thok, a warrior from the hammock species. His scales were dark green and covered in scars. "So these are the famous humans. You look so small and soft. How did you ever reach the stars?" Dr. Li Jun, the human scientist, stepped forward. He wore simple clothes and thick glasses. "We worked together," he said quietly. "Our whole species cooperated to build our first ships. Several aliens made happy sounds. The plant-like quillins rustled their leaves in approval. The energy beings pulsed brighter. Even some of the scarred warriors nodded with respect. "How wonderful," said a floating blue creature. "Your species must be very peaceful. We studied your broadcasts from Earth, such beautiful cooking shows, and nature programs. Your people seem to love harmony." Kang Wu's jaw twitched slightly, but he said nothing. Park Nari's smile stayed in place. "We do value peace," she said carefully. The group moved to a large dining hall where tables floated in the air. Each table had food from different worlds. Some dishes glowed, others moved slightly, and a few seemed to sing soft melodies as Thok began telling stories about his people's great battles. "The hammocks have conquered 17 worlds," he announced, thumping his clawed fist on the table. "Each victory was glorious. We showed those weak planets the power of true warriors, the Mikyu." Other aliens listened with interest. Some even clapped their hands, tentacles, or whatever they had. In this galaxy, it seemed that conquering other worlds was something to be proud of. "Tell us, humans," said a creature that looked like a giant insect. "What great battles has your species won? What worlds have you conquered?" Park Nari exchanged a quick look with her team. "We prefer to solve problems without fighting," she said. Thok laughed so hard that he sprayed food across the table. "No fighting? How boring. What do you do when someone threatens you?" "We talk," said Li Jun. "We try to understand each other." "And if talking fails?" asked the insect being. There was a moment of silence. Kang Wu's hand slowly moved to rest on the table. His fingers drummed once, twice, then stopped. "We keep trying to talk," Park Nari said finally. The aliens made sounds of approval. "How pure," whispered Veltar. "A species that has learned to live without violence. You will bring great wisdom to our council." After dinner, the humans were given rooms in the station's guest area. The walls were clear, showing the stars outside. In the distance, ships came and went, like glowing fish in a dark ocean. Park Nari sat in her room with her team around her. Kang Wu stood by the window, still in his uniform. "They think we're helpless," said Kim Sora, the military strategist. She was small and quiet, but her eyes were sharp. "They see us as weak little creatures who got lucky." "Maybe that's good," Li Jun said, cleaning his glasses. "If they think we're harmless, they won't see us as a threat." "But they don't respect us either," said Ryu Taman, the intelligence officer. He had been listening to alien communications all day. "They think we're like children playing with toys we don't understand." Kang Wu turned from the window. Ma'am, permission to speak freely? Park Nari nodded. Always, Sergeant. Those hammocks conquered 17 worlds. The Zephyrians are known for enslaving entire species. The Korth eat their enemies alive. His voice was calm and professional. These aren't peaceful beings playing at war games. They're killers who think we're prey. Animals. And what would you have us do? Park Nari asked. Show them our weapons? Tell them about our wars? Prove we can be as violent as they are? No, ma'am, Kang Wu replied. But maybe we should be ready for when they test us. Outside their window, a hammock warship docked at the station. It was covered in spikes and painted with pictures of skulls. The message was clear. These people understood only strength. Park Nari stood and walked to the window. The Earth was somewhere out there, far away among the stars. Humanity had fought and killed and destroyed for thousands of years before they learned to work together. Now they were trying to be better, to be the peaceful species they pretended to be. But in a galaxy full of warriors and conquerors, would peaceful be enough? We stick to the plan, she said finally. We're here to join their community, not frighten them. We show them our best side. And if our best side isn't good enough? Asked Kim Sora. Park Nari was quiet for a long moment. Through the wall, they could hear Thok telling more war stories to anyone who would listen. His voice carried the joy of someone who loved violence and was proud of it. Then we hope they never find out what our worst side looks like, she said softly. Kang Wu nodded once and returned to watching the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships waited in the darkness. They were painted white and carried symbols of peace. But underneath the peaceful paint, they were still human ships, built by a species that had learned to wage war before they learned to walk among the stars. The next few months would test whether humanity could truly leave its violent past behind, or whether the galaxy would force them to remember what they used to be. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The humans had their own section of Nexus Station now, with offices and meeting rooms. Ambassador Park Nari had attended dozens of boring meetings about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Everything seemed peaceful and normal, until the Zephyrian Empire decided to start a war. The emergency session called all council members to the main chamber. Park Nari sat with her team while alien representatives filled the floating seats around them. On the big screen at the front, they could see images from the edge of Quillen space. Zephyrian warships hung in the darkness like metal spiders. They were black and sharp, covered with weapons that gleamed in the starlight. Each ship was 3 times larger than anything the peaceful Quillens had ever built. They demand our farming world, said Mello, the Quillen elder. The plant-like being's leaves shook with fear. They say we must give them our best planets or face destruction. Veltar's crystal body flashed angry red colors. This is unacceptable. The Zephyrians cannot simply take what they want. But what can we do? Asked a floating blue creature. Their ships outnumber the Quillen defense fleet 50-1. Thok the hammock warrior stood up, his scales gleaming. My people could send ships. We would fight with honor. Your ships are on the other side of the galaxy, said the insect-like being. By the time they arrive, the Quillens will be dead or enslaved. Kim Sora leaned forward in her seat. She had been studying the ship formations on the screen. Those positions are terrible, she whispered to Ryu Taman. They have no rear guard, no support craft. A decent strike force could break them in 6 hours. 12 minutes, whispered back Kang Wu, who had been watching the same display. If you knew what you were doing. Park Nari heard them but kept her face calm. Around them, the aliens argued about what to do. Some wanted to send strongly worded messages. Others suggested economic sanctions. A few talked about asking the Zephyrians nicely to stop. None of them talked about actually fighting. Perhaps, said Veltar, we should ask our newest members for advice. Humans, your species is known for finding peaceful solutions. What would you suggest? All eyes turned to the human section. Park Nari felt the weight of their stares. These beings had invited humanity to join them because they thought humans were gentle and wise. They wanted peaceful advice from a peaceful species. We could try diplomatic talks, Park Nari said carefully. Sometimes understanding what someone really wants can lead to a solution. Yes, said Mello, leaves rustling with hope. Perhaps the Zephyrians have needs we could help them meet in other ways. On the screen, a Zephyrian ship fired a warning shot at a Quillen farming station. The blast lit up space like a tiny sun. When the light faded, half the station was gone. Lee Jun pushed his glasses up and spoke quietly. Or maybe they just want to take your things and hurt your people. Some beings are like that. The chamber fell silent. The idea that someone might simply choose to be evil seemed to shock most of the aliens. They were used to conflicts that could be solved with talking and compromise. Surely no species would choose violence without reason, said the blue floating creature. There must be something driving them to this extreme behavior. Ryu Taman made a small sound that might have been a laugh. He covered it with a cough when people looked at him. The debate went on for hours. The aliens suggested sending food to the Zephyrians in case they were hungry. They talked about offering them empty planets they could settle instead. They proposed cultural exchanges to help everyone understand each other better. Through it all, the humans sat quietly and listened. Kang Wu's face showed nothing, but his fingers tapped silently on his knee. Kim Sora took notes that looked like she was planning a dinner party, but were actually detailed attack strategies. Lee Jun drew pictures that seemed like flowers but were really weapon systems. Finally, as the meeting was ending, Thok stood up again. What about you, humans? Your species has never faced real war, has it? You would not understand the hard choices we must make. Park Nari opened her mouth to answer, but Kang Wu spoke first. We've had some experience with conflict, sir. What kind of experience? Thok laughed. Did someone steal your farming tools? Did two villages argue over who got the best fishing spots? Kang Wu's eyes went very still. Something like that, sir. After the meeting, the human team gathered in their private office. Through the windows, they could see more Zephyrian ships arriving at the edge of Quillen space. The peaceful plant people were sending messages asking for help, but the galaxy seemed to have no answers. We could end this, Kim Sora said, staring at the tactical display. One carrier group, maybe two. Hit them fast and hard before they know what happened. With what authority? Park Nari asked. We're guests here. Junior members. They invited us because they think we're harmless. Maybe that's the problem, said Ryu Taman. He was reading intelligence reports on his tablet. The Zephyrians have done this before. They pick on peaceful species because no one fights back. They're bullies. And how do you deal with bullies? Asked Lee Jun. Everyone looked at Kang Wu. The Marine had been quiet through most of the discussion, but now he spoke with certainty. You show them that picking on peaceful people has consequences. On the screen, another Quillen station sent out a distress call. The message was full of terror and desperation. These were farmers and teachers and artists who had never hurt anyone. Now they were about to die because they couldn't defend themselves. Park Nari closed her eyes. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council to be part of something better, to show that they had grown beyond their violent past. But watching innocent people get slaughtered while everyone stood around talking was not better. It was just cowardice. The Council will never approve military action, she said finally. They don't think in those terms. Then maybe, said Kim. Sora, it's time they learned to think differently. Kang Wu nodded once. Ma'am, request permission to prepare some educational materials. What kind of educational materials? The kind that explains why peaceful people sometimes need someone to stand between them and the monsters. Park Nari looked around at her team. These were good people who had chosen to serve humanity's diplomatic mission. But they were also soldiers, strategists, and intelligence officers. They knew things about war and violence that would give the gentle aliens nightmares. Prepare your materials, Sergeant, she said quietly. But we don't act without council approval. Understood, ma'am. But if they ask for our help, we give it to them, all of it. Outside, the Zephyrian fleet grew larger. Soon they would attack, and the gentle Quillens would face horrors they couldn't imagine. The Galactic Council would watch and debate and send angry messages, but humanity would be ready to do what peaceful people sometimes had to do. They would be ready to remember what they used to be, before they learned to be better. The Zephyrian attacks began at dawn, station time. The humans watched from their office as reports came in from the Quillen border worlds. The plant people's peaceful farming colonies were being destroyed one by one. Park Nari stood at the big screen, reading the casualty reports. Each number represented thousands of gentle beings who had never hurt anyone. Their only crime was being too weak to fight back. "The Quillens are asking for help again," said Han Yumi, the communications specialist. She had been listening to their desperate radio calls all morning. "They're begging the council to do something." "What kind of help are they asking for?" asked Cho Minho, the logistics coordinator. He looked like a peaceful supply clerk, but Kang Wu had noticed that Cho Minho always knew exactly where every ship, weapon, and soldier was located. "Food, medical supplies, transport ships to evacuate refugees," Han Yumi replied. "They're not asking anyone to fight. They just want to save as many people as possible." The council met again in emergency session. This time the chamber was filled with panic and fear. The gentle aliens had never seen anything like the Zephyrian attack footage. Ships burning in space, colonies turning to ash, families torn apart as they tried to escape. Dr. Keth, a blue energy being from the Altrurian species, floated at the center of the group. The Altrurians were famous throughout the galaxy for being completely peaceful. They had never fought a war in their entire history. "I must ask," Dr. Keth said in a voice like singing crystals, "has any species here ever engaged in what you might call organized violence?" The question hung in the air like a dangerous smell. Most aliens looked uncomfortable. Even the warrior species like the hammocks seemed embarrassed. "We hammocks have our territorial disputes," Thok admitted, "but those are honorable battles between warriors. We do not attack defenseless farming colonies." "The Korth have raiding traditions," said a creature covered in spikes. "But we only take from those who can fight back. There is no honor in crushing the weak." All eyes turned to the humans. Park Nari felt the weight of their stares and the burden of humanity's secrets. "We have had disagreements in our history," she said carefully. Dr. Keth pulsed brighter with curiosity. "What kind of disagreements?" Kim Sora started to speak, then caught Park Nari's warning look. The military strategist closed her mouth and looked down at her hands. "Different groups wanted different things," Park Nari continued. "Sometimes we had to work very hard to find solutions everyone could accept." Thok made a sound like a laugh. "Disagreements? Work hard to find solutions? You make it sound like arguing over who gets the last piece of fruit." Several aliens made amused sounds. The idea of human disagreement seemed cute to them, like children squabbling over toys. "We hammocks have glorious war songs that span millennia," Thok continued. "Epic battles between mighty warriors. What could you softskins possibly know about real conflict?" Kang Wu's jaw twitched, but he remained silent and still. Li Jun pushed, his glasses up nervously. "Well, we did have some rather serious misunderstandings over the years." "Like what?" asked the spiky Korth raider. "Trade disputes, resource allocation debates, philosophical differences." Li Jun's voice got quieter with each phrase. The aliens nodded with understanding. These sounded like the kinds of problems civilized beings might face. Nothing like the brutal warfare they were seeing from the Zephyrians. On the main screen, another Quillen colony was under attack. The footage showed Zephyrian soldiers herding plant-being families into metal cages. Some of the younger Quillens were crying, their leaves turning brown with fear. "We must do something," whispered Mello, the Quillen elder. "They are taking our children." "What can we do?" asked Veltar, his crystal body flickering with helpless anger. "None of our species have real armies. The hammocks are too far away. The rest of us have only small defense forces." "Perhaps we could ask the humans to help with logistics," suggested Dr. Keth. "They seem very organized and peaceful. They could coordinate supply deliveries or refugee transport." The aliens turned to Park Nari with hopeful expressions. They wanted the harmless humans to handle the boring support work, while the real species figured out what to do about the fighting. "We would be happy to help in any way we can," Park Nari said. That evening, the human team gathered in their quarters. Through the windows, they could see Quillen refugee ships arriving at the station. The plant beings looked broken and terrified, many of them injured from the attacks. Kangwoo sat cleaning his sidearm with careful, practiced movements. It was something he did when he was thinking hard about difficult problems. "They want us to deliver food and bandages," Kim Sora said bitterly, "while an entire species gets slaughtered." "The Zephyrians are using terror tactics," Ryu Taman reported, reading from his intelligence tablet. "They're not just conquering territory, they're making examples. They want other species to see what happens when you resist them." "It's working," said Cho Minho. "Half the galaxy is scared to even speak against them now." Han Yumi looked up from her communications console. "I've been monitoring Zephyrian military channels. They're laughing about this. They think the whole galaxy is full of weaklings who won't fight back." "They're right," said Li Jun quietly. "These aliens have never faced a real enemy. They don't know how to fight back." Kangwoo finished cleaning his weapon and holstered it. "Ma'am, they think we're like them. Peaceful people who've never seen real war." "We are peaceful people," Park Nari replied. "That's what we came here to be." "No, ma'am. We're people who chose to be peaceful. There's a difference." Through the window, they watched more refugee ships arrive. Each one carried families who had lost everything to Zephyrian brutality. The aliens on the station offered them food and shelter and kind words, but no one offered them justice. "The council will meet again tomorrow," Park Nari said. "They'll probably ask us to coordinate refugee relief efforts." "And what if they ask us about fighting?" Kim Sora asked. "What if they want to know if humans have ever really been in a war?" Park Nari was quiet for a long moment. She thought about Earth's history, hidden safely in classified files. She thought about the wars that had shaped humanity, the battles that had taught them the true cost of violence. "Then maybe," she said finally, "it's time they learned what the word war really means." Kangwoo nodded once. "Should I prepare a briefing, ma'am?" "Prepare everything, Sergeant. If they want to know about human conflict, we'll give them the whole truth." "All of it?" Park Nari looked out at the refugee ships and the gentle aliens, trying to help them. These beings had never faced real evil before. They thought violence was something that happened to other people in distant places. "All of it," she confirmed. "If they're going to ask humans for help, they need to understand exactly what they're asking for." Outside, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the Zephyrian fleet was growing stronger. Soon they would attack again and more innocent people would die while the galaxy watched and did nothing. But perhaps it was time for the galaxy to learn that humanity had not always watched and done nothing. Perhaps it was time to explain why. Peaceful people sometimes needed guardians who remembered how to be dangerous. The breaking point came when the Zephyrians sent their message to the galaxy. The entire council gathered to watch as the transmission appeared on the main screen. It showed a Zephyrian commander standing in what looked like a cage. Behind him, young Quillen children were chained to metal posts. Their leaves were brown and withered from fear and pain. "People of the galaxy," the commander said in a voice like grinding metal. "See what happens to those who resist the Zephyrian Empire. These plant spawn thought their council friends would protect them. They were wrong." He gestured to one of the children, barely more than a sapling. "Watch and learn what defiance brings." The humans watched as the commander raised a device that sparked with electricity. The Quillen child screamed, a sound like wind through dying trees. Around the chamber, aliens began to weep or shake or retreat into themselves. Even Thok, the proud hammock warrior, seemed shaken. His scales had gone pale, and his claws were clenched into fists. The torture continued for 5 minutes. When it ended, the commander smiled at the camera. "We have 300 more like this one. Each day you delay surrender, we will broadcast another lesson. The choice is yours." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in horrified silence. Veltar's crystal body had gone completely dark. This is madness. How can any being do such things?" Dr. Keth, the peaceful energy being, was flickering like a dying light. "I do not understand," What purpose does causing pain serve? How does hurting children help them conquer territory? It doesn't, said Mello, the Quillen elder. The plant being's voice was barely a whisper. They do it because they enjoy it. More aliens began making sounds of distress. The idea that someone might cause pain simply because they liked doing it was too horrible for most of them to accept. We must surrender, said a small creature covered in fur. We cannot let them hurt more children. If we surrender, they win, said Thok, but his voice had no strength in it. They will do this to other species, other children. Then what do we do? Demanded Veltar, his crystal form flashing desperate colors. None of us can stop them. None of us know how to fight such evil. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. Some aliens wanted to surrender immediately. Others insisted they had to resist somehow. A few seemed to be having nervous breakdowns from the stress. Through it all, the humans sat quietly in their section. They watched the panic around them with calm, professional expressions that seemed out of place in the chaos. Finally, Veltar's voice cut through the noise. Humans, he called desperately. Your species seems remarkably composed in the face of this horror. Do you have any insights into stopping such cruelty? All eyes turned to the human delegation. Park Nari started to stand, but Gunnery Sergeant Kang Wu was already moving. He stepped forward before anyone could stop him. Sir, he said in his steady, professional voice. With respect, you want to know about stopping cruelty? Yes, anything. Please. Kang Wu's expression didn't change. First, you need to understand what cruelty actually looks like. He gestured to the now dark screen where the torture had been broadcast. That wasn't cruelty, sir. That was just the beginning. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the panicking aliens stopped to listen. You see, Kang Wu continued. What you just watched was psychological warfare. The Zephyrians aren't just trying to hurt those children. They're trying to break your will to resist. They want you to be so horrified that you surrender without fighting. It's working, whispered Dr. Keth. Yes, sir, it is, because you don't understand what they're really doing. Kang Wu walked to the main display console. May I use this, sir? Veltar nodded weakly. Kang Wu activated the holographic display and began pulling up files from his personal tablet. You want to understand cruelty? Let me show you what my species had to learn about it. The first image that appeared was a document covered in human writing. At the top, in large letters, were the words, Geneva Convention. This is a treaty, Kang Wu explained. It sets rules for warfare, rules about what is and isn't acceptable, even when people are trying to kill each other. Thok leaned forward. Rules for war? How can there be rules when warriors fight? Because, sir, we learned that some things are too terrible to allow, even in battle. Kang Wu's voice remained calm and professional. We had to create these rules to protect our enemies from us. He changed the display to show a list of prohibited actions. The aliens read in growing horror as Kang Wu explained each item. No torture of prisoners, no targeting of civilians, no use of certain weapons that cause unnecessary suffering, no attacks on medical facilities or personnel. But why would you need rules against these things? Asked Dr. Keth. Why would anyone even think to do them? Kang Wu looked directly at the energy being. Because humans thought of them first. The chamber was so quiet that they could hear the station's life support systems humming. You see, the problem isn't that my species doesn't understand violence, Kang Wu continued. The problem is that we understand it too well. We've done things that would give you nightmares. We've fought wars that lasted decades and killed millions. We've burned entire continents and turned cities into glass. He brought up another document, this one showing casualty statistics from human conflicts. The numbers were so large that most aliens couldn't even process them. This is why we have something called the Geneva Convention, Kang Wu said, because we had to create rules to limit how terrible we could be to each other. Kim Sora stood up and walked to join him. The sergeant is being modest, she said quietly. The Geneva Convention wasn't created because humans were naturally good. It was created because we were naturally very, very good at being bad. She gestured to the statistics on the screen. These numbers represent what happens when humans stop holding back. When we decide that rules don't matter anymore. But you're so peaceful, whispered Mello. You've never hurt anyone since you joined the council. Because we choose not to, Kang Wu replied. Every day, every hour, every minute, we choose to be better than what we were. But the choice is always there. Park Nari finally stood and joined her team at the display. What the sergeant is trying to explain is that human peace isn't innocence. It's a decision we make constantly, based on the knowledge of what happens when we make a different decision. You mean, said Veltar slowly, that you could stop the Zephyrians? We could stop them, Park Nari confirmed, but you need to understand what that would mean, what you would be asking us to become. Kang Wu changed the display one more time. Now it showed tactical analyses, orbital bombardment calculations, and casualty projections for a strike against the Zephyrian fleet. This is what it would look like, he said matter-of-factly. 72 hours from authorization to complete enemy surrender. Estimated Zephyrian military casualties, 97%. Estimated civilian casualties, minimal, but only because we would specifically try to avoid them. The alien stared at the numbers in shocked silence. The choice is yours, Park Nari said quietly. You can continue trying to negotiate with beings who torture children for entertainment, or you can ask us to remember what we used to be, before we learned to be better. Thok, the proud warrior, spoke in a voice like broken glass. Your species, you chose to be peaceful. Kang Wu nodded. Every day, sir. Every single day. And if you chose otherwise? The Marine's smile was warm and terrible at the same time. Let's hope you never have to find out. The next morning, everything changed on Nexus Station. New humans began arriving on transport ships that looked nothing like the peaceful vessels the aliens had seen before. These ships were sleek and gray, with no decorations or bright colors. They docked quietly and efficiently, and their passengers walked through the station corridors with a purpose that made other species step aside. Park Nari stood in the main docking bay, watching her people arrive. To the casual observer, they looked like ordinary humans in simple clothes, but she knew better. Ambassador, said a woman with short black hair and kind eyes. I'm Park Hyan, cultural anthropologist. I'm here to help with the refugee crisis. Park Nari shook her hand, noting the calluses that came from weapons training, not archaeological digs. Welcome aboard, Dr. Park. Behind Park Hyan came a young man with a friendly smile. Kim Gina, agricultural consultant, he said cheerfully. I heard the Quillans need help with their farming colonies. His handshake was firm, and Park Nari caught the faint scent of chemicals on his clothes. Not fertilizer chemicals. The kind used for entirely different purposes. More humans introduced themselves as they passed. Lee Do-hyun, mineral surveyor. Song Minji, pediatric counselor. Bae Subin, communications engineer. Each one seemed perfectly normal and harmless. The aliens watching from the observation deck made approving sounds. Such helpful people, said Dr. Keth. They truly are a peaceful species. But Kang Wu, standing next to Park Nari, recognized what the aliens could not see. The way Lee Do-hyun's eyes automatically calculated structural weak points in the station walls. How Song Minji positioned herself to watch all the exits while seeming to just make conversation. The fact that Bae Subin's communications equipment included several devices that definitely weren't for sending messages. How many? Kang Wu asked quietly. 57, Park Nari replied, plus support staff arriving tomorrow. What's their real specialization breakdown? Park Nari consulted her tablet. Psychological operations, biological warfare, demolitions, counterinsurgency, intelligence gathering, strategic planning, and... She paused. One actual pediatric counselor. The Quillan children really will need therapy after this. That afternoon, the council met again to discuss the human offer of assistance. The chamber was filled with hope for the first time since the crisis began. Here were people who wanted to help, who understood logistics and organization. We are grateful for the human volunteers, said Veltar. Your species' expertise in peaceful cooperation will be invaluable. Thok looked down at the humans with something like pity. though I fear your soft people may not be prepared for the horrors they will see in the refugee camps. War is ugly. Business, Kim Sora smiled politely. We'll manage, sir. The important thing, said Mello, is that someone is finally taking action to help my people, even if it's just medical aid and food distribution. Dr. Keth floated closer to the human section. I must say, I'm impressed by your species' compassion. To risk yourselves helping strangers shows true evolution beyond your primitive past. Park. Nari exchanged glances with her team. We try to help when we can. Your primitive past? Dr. Keth continued thoughtfully. I've been studying your cultural broadcasts more carefully. You mention having disagreements and resource disputes, but I notice you never discuss the details. What was your species like before you became peaceful? The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Every human in the chamber suddenly became very still. We were different, Park Nari said carefully. Different how? Pressed Dr. Keth. The hammocks tell grand stories of their warrior ancestors. The Korth sing songs about their great raids. Even we Altrurians have myths about our distant past when we felt anger. What myths do humans tell about their violent days? Cho Minho, the logistics coordinator, spoke up quietly. We don't tell myths about them, sir. We keep very detailed records. Records? Yes, sir. We document everything. Dates, locations, casualties, methods, outcomes. We study them so we can learn from our mistakes. Several aliens made interested sounds. This seemed like a very practical approach. Could you share some of these records? Asked Thok. I would like to understand how your warrior ancestors fought their battles. Every human in the chamber turned to look at Park Nari. She felt the weight of their stares and the larger weight of the decision before her. Sergeant Kang Wu, she said finally. Please give the council a brief overview of human military history. Kang Wu stood and activated the main display. Yes, ma'am. Where would you like me to start? The beginning. Which beginning, ma'am? The first recorded warfare? The development of organized armies, the invention of gunpowder, the nuclear age? The aliens listened to this exchange with growing confusion. These didn't sound like vague myths or ancient legends. Start with something simple, Park Nari decided. Maybe explain the concept of total war. Kang Wu nodded and began typing on the display console. Total war is when a conflict involves the complete mobilization of a society's resources. Not just armies fighting armies, but entire populations dedicated to the war effort. The first image that appeared was a map of Earth during what humans called World War II. It showed battle, lines across every continent and ocean. This particular conflict involved 61 countries and lasted 6 years, Kang Wu explained in his calm, professional voice. Total military casualties were approximately 21 million. Total civilian casualties were approximately 50 to 60 million. The chamber was completely silent. Those numbers can't be right, whispered Dr. Keth. 60 million? That's more than the entire population of most worlds. Yes, sir. Earth's population at the time was about 2 billion. We killed roughly 4% of our entire species in 6 years. Song Minji, the pediatric counselor, raised her hand. Should I explain the Holocaust, sir? Or the strategic bombing campaigns? Those might help illustrate the civilian casualty figures. Not yet, Park Nari said quickly. Let's see if they have questions first. Thok was staring at the display with his mouth open. 60 million dead? In one war? How many wars like this have you fought? That was just the largest one, Kim Sora replied. We fought thousands of smaller conflicts. Some lasted decades. Some involved entire continents. But why? Demanded Veltar, his crystal body flashing desperate colors. What could possibly be worth such destruction? The humans looked at each other uncertainly. How do you explain to peaceful beings that humans had fought wars over everything and nothing? Over territory, resources, ideas, religions, and sometimes just because they could? We fought over differences of opinion, Li Jun said finally. Differences of opinion killed 60 million people. Different opinions about how society should work, what gods to worship, Which economic systems were best? Who should rule what? Territory. Li Jun's voice got quieter as he spoke. Sometimes we fought because one group thought another group wasn't really human. The aliens made sounds of horror and disbelief. But surely, said Dr. Keth desperately, surely you learned from these mistakes. Surely after such losses your species would never fight again? Kang Wu changed the display to show a timeline of human conflicts. Wars and battles stretched from the beginning of recorded history to the present day, an unbroken chain of violence spanning millennia. We did learn, he said quietly. We learned how to fight more efficiently. Park Hyun, the cultural anthropologist, stood up. If I may, Sergeant, I think our guests would benefit from understanding the full scope of human capabilities. She activated her own tablet and connected it to the display. New images appeared: psychological warfare manuals, interrogation techniques, weapons specifications, strategic doctrines. My specialty is understanding how societies break down under pressure, she explained in her kind, gentle voice. How to identify the key structures that hold a civilization together, and how to eliminate them with minimal resources. The aliens stared at her in growing horror. You study how to destroy civilizations? Whispered Mello. I study how civilizations destroy themselves, Park Hyun corrected, and then I help make that process more efficient. Kim Jina, the agricultural consultant, smiled cheerfully. My field is related. I work on crop diseases and environmental modification. It's amazing how quickly a society collapses when the food supply disappears. You poison food? Oh, no, sir. That would be crude and inefficient. I prefer genetic modification of the crops themselves. Much more elegant, and it affects multiple generations. One by one, the other civilian volunteers began explaining their real expertise. Demolitions disguised as geological surveys. Communications disruption masquerading as technical assistance. Military intelligence gathering presented as cultural exchange. The aliens listened in stunned silence as humans casually discussed ways to destroy entire civilizations. Finally, Dr. Keth's voice cut through the presentations. Stop, please, just stop. The humans fell silent. You're all soldiers, Dr. Keth said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir, Park Nari replied. Every adult human receives basic military training. These people represent our specialized capabilities. But you said you were peaceful. We are peaceful. We choose to be peaceful. But peaceful doesn't mean helpless. Thok, the hammock warrior, spoke in a voice like broken glass. My people conquered 17 worlds in 300 years.